for being here. Just a quick programming note. We will have lunch after, so if everybody would like to stay for that, you're welcome to. As I said, my name is Peter Talby. I'm here on behalf of Building America's Future. I'd like to welcome you to our ongoing America's Future Tour, which is a policy series launched late last year to address some of our most pressing and important issues of our time. The mission of Building America's Future is to inform and empower Americans to take ownership of our country's policy direction and demand that our government at all levels enact policy reforms to improve the lives of Americans and make America's future strong. Today we are discussing strengthening Pennsylvania families. As a thought leader with deep experience in national security and international economic policy, and most importantly, a father to 6 daughters, we look forward to hearing from our special guest, David McCormick. With that, I'll turn things over to Delaware County Chairman, Nick, and just a reminder, if you just silence yourself.
Thank you, Peter. So, I'd like to welcome everybody here today. I'd like to welcome you to Springfield Township. That's where you are actually sitting at the moment, and it happens to be my hometown as well. Springfield actually continues to be an aspirational community. Taxes are controlled here, services are stellar, law and order still exists, and the school district is among the best in the state. We have committed Republican commissioners, as well as the Springfield GOP chairman, Michael Puccio, who fight every day to keep this community a wonderful place to live and to raise a family. So yes, Springfield's a remarkable community because it's held on while the county has seen Democrats take control of virtually every facet of government over the last 8 years. As difficult as it has been, we are happy to report that the pendulum has begun to swing back, although much work remains. The people doing this work, of course, are our municipal leaders and our committee men and women throughout Delco's 49 municipalities, and many of those folks are here today. So once again, we can't thank you enough, but again, in front of the entire gang, thanks for all the hard work that you have done and that you will do over the next several months. We have an reinvigorated new team at the county party, and I just would like to make a couple quick introductions of that new team. We have our executive director, Megan Wagner. Vice Chairwoman, Lindsay Cohen. Our Treasurer, Terry Tracy. Our Secretary and Finance Chair, Dave DeLuce. So this team was unanimously re-elected last week, and we're proud to report some exciting news. Republicans have won registration for the last 3 months for the first time in almost 10 years. We have a mail-in ballot plan, a message that's resonating, and we're seeing about 50% of all new applications for mail that are actually Republican. In an effort to communicate in a modern way, we've added a podcast called Street Beat, hosted by respected longtime Philadelphia TV journalist Dan Cuellar, who's here today. We've added to our committee person roles. We had dipped to actually below 400, and we've added almost another 100, so we're going in the right direction again. We've elevated new municipal leaders across the county. But as importantly as all this, we're holding the Democrat county government accountable in the face of higher taxes, a downgraded bond rating, reckless spending and hiring, rising crime, and broken promises. And we are excited to be doing all this work for our local candidates, for President Trump, and of course, our good friend Dave McCormick to get them over the finish line in November. So, you didn't come here to hear me today. There are 2 speakers that we're happy to have, and I have the privilege to introduce one of them now. So, Mary Katharine is a nationally prominent journalist, author, speaker, and host of her own lighthearted news podcast, Getting Hammered. As a political commentator, she brought a conservative perspective mixed with humorous takes on politics and pop culture to CNN from 2016 to 2022, and Fox News from 2007 to 2015. She's also a frequent speaker on college campuses on the issue of free speech. In 2016, she moderated an ABC News GOP presidential primary debate in New Hampshire, which featured 9 candidates. Ham is the co-author with Guy Benson of The End of Discussion: How the Left's Outrage Industry Shuts Down Debate, Manipulates Voters, and Makes America Less Free and Fun, for sure. She has written for The Atlantic, the USA Today, and the New York Post. She also has spoken and written on her faith in overcoming hardships after the loss of her first husband in 2015. She is remarried in 2020. Ham brings a message of resilience and redemption to audiences. Ham is a diehard UGA football fan and a Southern gal who's close to her family. She lives with her husband and 4 children and a very energetic puppy named Scout, currently in Virginia. At this time, I'd like to introduce Mary Katharine Ham.
Hello, guys. This is such a beautiful event. Thank you so much for introducing me and for having me here. I know you guys heard I was a diehard UGA football fan. And you're like, meh, do we care? Except you do care, because the Eagles are welcome for that defensive line. It's like the entire defense just left one year and came to Philly, so I enjoy being able to watch them in action. It's so great to drive up to Pennsylvania today from DC, because I like to travel through what they call normal land. I get to leave the Beltway, and I get to see the giant American flags everywhere, and I get to see car dealerships and farmland and people out and about with their kids. And it's not that we don't do those things inside the Beltway, it just feels a little different, right? But to be in Pennsylvania in an election year, 2024, is exciting because you guys are so popular right now. You are like the most popular state in the union, because all roads to 270 run through Pennsylvania. That is to say, the Biden campaign spends so much time here that it's like if you were a lady, he'd just be sniffing your hair 24/7. That's what's going on here. But you know why you guys are so popular? Actually, I wonder sometimes if Ohio is like a little jealous that you guys are so popular during an election year. Because, you know, they used to be a battleground, not so much anymore. You guys are much more swingy. I don't mean that in a rude way. And so I wonder if they get a little jealous of all the attention sometimes. Although when it comes in the form of hair sniffing, maybe they're not that upset about it. And the campaign ads and the texting. But I appreciate you guys doing it. I appreciate you being engaged in the process. Because the reason that Pennsylvania matters, the reason that swing states matter, is because, as I noted, they're full of normal people who have normal concerns about normal things in daily life and the normal ways in which they would like to bring up their families or spend time with their grandkids and live healthy, happy American lives in freedom, right? But that's something that doesn't always come at the top of the list of connecting with for politicians inside the Beltway in Washington, right? And I know you guys feel that. Being normal is not at the top of their list. But you guys understand what it's like to deal with childcare costs. You guys understand what it's like to deal with the fact that the price of eggs is like, at this point, making me go, should I buy a chicken coop and another acre just to produce eggs? Like, what's the cost-benefit analysis on that? The folks in DC don't often understand those concerns. Now, I'm here speaking at a political event today, and I do a job in politics. So don't think that I am normal. Oh no, I am not. But I like to think of myself as normie adjacent. I have 4 children, from 10 down to 1. So I spend time clothing them, feeding them, teaching them. And I spend a lot of time noticing that folks in my line of work don't always understand what we're dealing with at home. However, because I am only normie adjacent, what I am is like people who are political junkies, and some of you in this room might understand. We're sort of like people who watch like Days of Our Lives or the WWE every single week, and we're telling everyone else, no, I swear something really important is happening every day. And you guys need to tune in to every twist and turn of this plot. And your neighbors say, I don't know, man, I feel like I got a lot of stuff to do, and I could just tune in once every 4 years and kind of get the scoop and then go vote, right? But the beauty of people who are normie adjacent, like myself, and like some of you guys maybe, frankly, I look out here and I see just a lot of normal. But if you're like me and you're really into politics, and you are concerned about policy, and you're here to hear about those things and here to hear about ways that you can change people's day-to-day lives with those policies, you're normie adjacent. And the great thing about you is that you can talk about these things to your neighbors and friends because you know they are important. You know it's important to have people who understand the struggles in daily lives of regular people who can translate that into policy. And that's the thing that I've been trying to do with my career. Another thing I've been trying to do with my career, by the way, voters all year, all cycle, all the last 4 years are just crying out for politicians who act normal. And Biden's like, my uncle was eaten by cannibals. Like, nice try, buddy. Okay, so here's the next part of my career that I'm thinking about. And it is this. Oh, I should also mention, Bob Casey's answer for this is just, can I just keep saying shrinkflation? Like over and over and over again. No, because that doesn't answer people's questions in their normal lives. Another real weakness of the politicians that I spend a lot of time with, particularly if they've been in DC for a long time, is when they do have to get in front of a camera or they do have to run for re-election, and then they have to do things that normal people do, like grilling. I don't know if you guys saw Chuck Schumer grilling this week. Now, I want to give him a slight pass because he did mention that he's new to grilling, okay? In his tweet, in his picture, in which there's a grill with a raw hamburger with a piece of cheese on top, uncooked, he says, look, I'm new to this. I've lived in an apartment for a long time. Okay, city dweller, fine. Let's give him a slight pass. Is there no one in the office? Is there no one who could take a picture who knew how a grill works? How grilling works? And this is a problem we run into frequently. And I talk about it because it is a proxy for doing normal things. I think that stat where everyone says, which candidate would you like to have a beer with more? That is a stand-in for like, can you come to my neighborhood barbecue and act normal for 5 minutes, right? Can you have a beer with us? Back in a North Carolina Senate race, Cal Cunningham was running down there as a guy who, now this is pretty much all he's known for, where he had an apron. The apron, by the way, for the politicians is always fresh off of Amazon with the creases still in it, like has never been touched. And he's standing in front of a closed grill, or no, he's standing in front of a grill with a bunch of chicken ready to go on it. And it says, come to the barbecue or something. The problem is in his neck of the woods, North Carolina, which is where I'm from, barbecue is only pork. It is pig. You don't call barbecue hot dogs and chicken. So he got in a lot of trouble for this. Then you have Terry McAuliffe in the great Commonwealth of Virginia, another Commonwealth, who stood in front of a grill that was way too loaded, again with a lot of raw meat, if I remember correctly. Or you have Kathy Hochul up in New York, who stands next to the grill holding a spatula as if it's like, I don't know, roadkill or something, with a completely white dress and apron that has never been touched. And my plan is to start a consultancy that just shows people how to grill. Like just how to open a package of meat, how to, I don't know, go to the grocery store. This could be an add-on in my process because, when Nancy Pelosi is asked about groceries and she understands it as what her butler brings to the home that she can put in her Sub-Zero, that is different than what the rest of us experience. So groceries, grilling, and grandparents, just all the normal things I'm going to teach to the politicians. But as I said, this is all a proxy for understanding what people are going through. And I know you guys have an understanding of that, of taking out a mortgage, it feels like, to do childcare. I understand it. I end up working part-time to save my family money because the risk-benefit and the cost-benefit analysis of doing full-time work is different than it used to be, right? And I've got 2 babies at home. People who went through, for instance, schools closing for 18 months, which is a thing that happened in Northern Virginia and happened in a lot of localities in Pennsylvania as well, where the system that people counted on to serve their normal everyday needs, the things that people looked around and said, this is obviously what my tax dollars go to, suddenly had that taken from them. And then they had public servants who didn't understand what they were going through tell them, you're being selfish to ask for these services. It's not selfish to look at your public servants and to look at the services that you are paying a lot of money for and say, these should work for my family, period. But they will tell you that you're out of line to do that if they're out of touch enough, and a lot of them are. I know what it feels like, and I know you know what it feels like to look at the system and say, I deserve results, and they're not being given to me. One of the things I love about being in Pennsylvania, and about the fact that I get to introduce the guy I get to introduce now, is that he understands. He's not a guy I have to coach about grilling. I saw him at Gino's. He was on the grill. He was fine. Free hand with that. He's a veteran. He's a guy who I've met in the process of working with the Travis Manion Foundation, a group that's close to my heart and based in Doylestown, where we do work with families of the fallen, with survivors of veteran deaths, with veterans dealing with mental health issues, and we train veterans to go into schools and be mentors to young people all over this country. And I know he cares about that, and he cares about the mental health of veterans, something that's close to my heart that I hear tragic stories about every day. And I know that you guys care about those folks as well. You care about school. You care about raising families. And so, because I didn't have to give him a grilling class before we came out here, we got plenty of time to welcome the next senator from the great Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, Dave McCormick. Come on out.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Frank, for hosting. Thank you, Mary Katharine, for that great introduction and those kind words. And thank you to Building America's Future for hosting this important event. And it's great to be with you here in Delaware County. Thank you all for being here. I really appreciate you coming out in the middle of the day. And we need your support. We need your support here in Delaware County more than ever to win in November and to get this campaign and our country across the finish line. So thank you all for being here. You know, when our 6 daughters were younger, my wife Dean and I placed a lot of importance on Sunday dinners. Sunday dinners were important. Like most families, our weeks were very hectic. Dean and I both worked. Our daughters had school, soccer practice, homework, friends. But we would always try to bring our blended family together on Sundays. And I'm sure many of you today here have a similar ritual. Maybe it's church and then watching the Steelers or the Birds on Sundays. Maybe it's Friday night Shabbat. We all do it for a simple reason. There's nothing more important than family. Nothing. At their best, families are the core of our lives, and they're the core of our nation. They are what a great writer called the little platoons that shape who we are, and they give us all a sense of meaning. They are our home, and they are the foundation of our communities. And families prepare each generation of Americans for their futures. But sadly, many families in Pennsylvania and across our country don't have the luxuries that many of us have. More and more children grow up without a stable 2-parent family around them. This trend is even more pronounced in minority communities, with only 33% of Black children and 55% of Hispanic children living with married birth parents. The breakdown of the family takes a toll on the next generation. kids in a single-parent home are 5 times more likely to live in poverty, more likely to have behavioral issues, more likely to drop out of school. And upward mobility, the idea of the American dream, is also stagnating. And it's leaving the American dream, the idea that you're going to be better off, your kids are going to be better off than you, it's leaving the American dream out of reach for more and more families. Children who are born to parents in the bottom fifth of family incomes have a 46% chance of remaining in the bottom fifth. 1 chance in 2 of remaining in the bottom fifth for their whole lives. And only a 3% chance of getting to the top fifth. And Americans are even having fewer babies, despite surveys showing that women wish they could have more. So my friends, America cannot be strong if our families are weak. And if our families are in decline, America will decline. And we can't let that happen. For far too long, career politicians in Washington have made life harder, not easier, for working families in Pennsylvania. Inflation that's driving up grocery bills, the cost of housing, and other essentials. Childcare, it's gotten so expensive it's out of reach for many families. Kids trapped in failing schools. Seniors who saved their whole lives for retirement but can't get access in the later chapters of their lives to the care that they need. Under the watch of President Biden and Pennsylvania's liberal Senator Bob Casey, these problems are getting worse, not better. After 18 years in Washington, Senator Casey has not been a proactive leader. He has merely been a rubber stamp liberal who votes with President Biden 98% of the time. And unfortunately, these Biden-Casey policy failures that we've seen over the past 3 years, they disproportionately hurt working families, families that are living month to month. It's time for new leadership, new ideas to actually solve the problems for Pennsylvania's families. And that's why today, and I'm so glad to have you all here, and I hope you'll bear with me, I want to outline what a pro-family agenda for our Commonwealth and for America would look like. What should we do? And to set the stage, I'll highlight some of the problems facing American families at every stage of life. You have to think about this all across the whole life cycle, from pregnancy to childhood to adulthood and retirement, and a range of solutions that we need to support thriving and prosperous families. And at the end, I'm going to give you 4 policy proposals, which when I get to the Senate, you can remind me, these are the 4 things that I said I would do as part of making sure we have healthy families across Pennsylvania. And it starts with making parenthood accessible for every family. There are few special moments in life that ever come close to the joy of becoming a father or a mother. Few. Any parent can tell you that. It's a feeling unlike any other. My wife, Dean, and I are blessed to share 6 amazing daughters between us. And watching our blended family grow into remarkable young women is truly an unparalleled joy. But for far too many Americans, the blessing of children and being able to grow their families can feel out of reach. Here's some numbers. The average health-related cost of having a child, including pregnancy, childbirth, and postpartum care, are nearly $19,000, including $3,000 out-of-pocket dollars with insurance. And that's if there's no complications. The average middle-class family spends about $13,000 a year in a child's first year of life. And that's only growing because of inflation. At every stage of the process, we need to make parenthood more accessible for every family. And there's a few ways we can help more parents experience the miracle of life. Now, the first thing we need to do, in my opinion, is enact legislation to make contraceptives more accessible and more affordable for women so they can have children when they're ready. Second, I'll always support access to in vitro fertilization to enable parents across our country to welcome children. My wife and I have many friends and colleagues who have used IVF, and we've seen how powerful this technology can be in turning despair into a celebration of new life. And when I was a CEO of Bridgewater, our team felt that we had this obligation to support those trying to have children as well as parents in the workplace. And so as a company, we help pay for fertility services like IVF. which are often not covered by insurance and can be prohibitively expensive. But as your senator, I will oppose any effort to restrict IVF, period. Any effort. But I'll go even further than that. Every family should get a $15,000 tax credit for fertility expenses, like IVF. This credit would put up to $15,000 in the pocket of families using IVF to have children. It'd be fully refundable, and it'd be available up to 2 tax years per family. That's how you make this potentially life-changing treatment accessible to more families who are frankly not able to have children now. Third, we should promote adoption services, which helps make Americans expand their families, many Americans expand their families and give young children a beautiful home by making the adoption tax credit created by the 2017 Trump tax cuts fully refundable. And finally, it's unacceptable that the United States has one of the highest maternal mortality rates in the world among wealthy nations. The US birth rate is also at an historic low, 1.6 children per woman, far below the 2.1 per woman average needed to keep our population in the United States from declining. And this is despite surveys that show women consistently saying over decades on average that they'd like to have 2 or more children. So when combined, these statistics make for a major problem. And in Pennsylvania, at least 5 counties have no hospitals, no birth centers, no providers offering obstetric care. So we need to expand obstetric training and resources for rural hospitals and providers, increase telehealth options, increase support for home visiting programs, and ensure Medicaid covers postpartum care for a full year after birth in every state. Beyond that, we need to expand access to parental leave. While we've made a lot of progress on availability of paid parental leave, we have a long way to go. Listen to this, only 27% of private sector workers nationwide, only 27%, have access to any paid family leave. That's unacceptable. How can we say we're pro-family when we don't let people take time off to start a family? When I was CEO, I strongly encouraged everyone on my team to take paid leave, regardless of whether they were the mom or the dad. And it always warmed my heart to see these wonderful teammates and friends experience the joy of having children, knowing that it was because they had the support that they needed. Now, we can't do this by imposing a federal mandate. That's not the answer, because it would force small businesses to raise prices or cut jobs to comply with some top-down, one-size-fits-all government policy that's not tailored to the needs of the employees or the business. But I think Congress should incentivize more employers to provide paid parental leave by making the paid family and medical leave employee tax credit that was passed during the Trump administration permanent, and expanding it to cover more forms of paid leave to give small businesses more flexibility. And for new and newly adopted parents who do not have access to paid leave or do not receive 100% of their wages during leave, we should allow them to pull forward up to 3 months of their Social Security benefits to finance it. Now, 3 months seems like a small amount in retirement if you're an elder on Social Security, but for new parents, this could provide a lifeline at a crucial time for their new family. We also need to support parents through the child tax credit. After early years of life, we need a pro-family agenda that continues to support parents. It's getting more and more expensive to have families. By age 8, the average cost of raising a child exceeds $15,000 per year. And that's only going up because of the inflation that's taking place under President Biden and Bob Casey. One of the most important federal policies that supports families is the child tax credit. And the 2017 Trump tax cuts doubled the credit, allowing low and middle income families to receive up to $2,000 per child each year, up $1,600 of which was refundable. President Trump and Republicans let parents keep more money. Bob Casey and the Democrats voted against it. And even with all that, we should do more. I support increasing the child tax credit to $4,200 per child under the age of 5 and $3,000 for children ages 6 to 17, and giving families the option to receive credit in monthly installments from mid-pregnancy to a child's 17th birthday. With the inflation under President Biden and Senator Casey's economic policies hitting pocketbooks every month, it's critical that the child tax credit be indexed to inflation going forward. I mean, think of this. 60% of Pennsylvanians are living paycheck to paycheck. This stuff matters. Finally, families with any income should be able to access credit from the first dollar of income to not disincentivize part-time work. The other thing I want to talk about is mental health services. Mental health is another important priority for families because far too many Americans with serious mental illness are not able to get the care they need. 14 million Americans approximately have serious mental health illness, yet more than half of them have their needs unmet for mental health services. Veterans in particular, something very near and dear to my heart as a veteran, particularly struggle with mental health. Approximately 22 veterans a day take their own lives. Yet according to the VA, 45% of veterans who use VA health services and commit suicide did not have a mental health diagnosis or receive mental health treatment. Half of the veterans who committed suicide got no mental health treatment. We must expand access to care for those with serious mental illness by getting rid of Medicaid rules that significantly constrain access to inpatient psychiatric beds, increasing Medicaid reimbursement rates for the care of the seriously mentally ill, and expanding access to mental health services at the VA. This is an area, one of the few, where Senator Casey and I have some agreement. But these reforms need to get done as soon as possible, and they haven't yet gotten across the finish line. And finally, we need to support our seniors during retirement. My mom and dad are 86 and 84, and I want to start by saying Senator Casey's lying about my position. Let me be perfectly clear, and I want my dad to hear this too. Our government must keep its promises it made to protect Social Security and Medicare benefits for our seniors. That's my position. That's President Trump's position, and that's the position of Republicans up and down the ballot. We also need to address the growing cost of elder care, which places a huge financial burden on families. It's gotten a lot worse because of inflation. Long-term care needs to vary for every senior, but we need to provide more affordable options through expanding health service accounts for seniors, leveraging long-term health care insurance, and increasing access to home and community-based services. These are the kinds of things I'll focus on as your senator. I'll always put problem solving over ideology. I'll always put principles over politics. And I'll always focus on addressing the root causes of the problem, not superficial solutions. And so to conclude today, I'd like to put forward 4 high-impact, concrete policy solutions that I would enact, that I would champion to help support families in our Commonwealth and across our nation. First, I'd give every working family access to tax-free savings accounts to pay for up to $10,000 per year in child care cost. As I just told you, it's $15,000 a year per kid. So this helps offset some of that growing cost. Eligibility for the FSA would begin at the middle of pregnancy and be available to any family with earnings to fund it and not be tied to a particular employer, so it goes with you. Second, we must give more low and middle income families access to child care offered by faith-based organizations and community organizations. The child care plan that President Biden and Senator Casey supported would have forced many faith-based organizations, including the Catholic Church and the Orthodox Union, to choose between their religious mission and providing child care services eligible for federal assistance. That's ridiculous. The Biden-Casey child care plan would have also raised the average cost of child care by $13,000 per year. Most families can't afford that. That government-centric, top-down solution is not the answer. Federal assistance programs should incentivize states to make it easier for faith-based organizations to open a child care facility by streamlining licensing, relaxing worker education requirements, or reforming zoning. At the same time, let's expand the eligibility for child care and development block grant to 1.5 times the state median income for an equivalent-sized family and increase the funding for the block grant. This would make a Pennsylvania family of 4 making $150,000 eligible for a voucher to use at an eligible child care provider of their choice. That ensures parents are making choices, not bureaucrats in Washington, and they can decide how and when they'll use that assistance for child care. Third, and many of you heard me say this, we must expand school choices by providing a federal tax credit for contributions to scholarship funds. Far too many kids in our great Commonwealth are left behind by our education system, and education is the key for opportunity for all. Nearly half of Pennsylvania's 4th and 8th graders cannot read proficiently at grade level. Only 26% of our 8th graders are proficient in math. And this is also a national security issue. We're 28th in the world in math among the 37th most industrialized country. 28th. The greatest country in the world, we're 28th out of 37. Parents should have the right to choose the school that's best for their child, rather than being forced to attend failing schools based solely on where they live. We should be funding student success, not systems that fail to deliver results. Now, growing up as the son of 2 Pennsylvania public school teachers, education meant everything, from food and shelter to the expectations that my parents set for my brother and me. And I feel that same sense of responsibility, I'm sure all of you do, for your kids. And I recently read about a student named Miles Slade Bowers from Harrisburg. And this just reinforces the point. He was supposed to go to a public high school that year and the year after, and it was rated as one of the worst performing schools in our Commonwealth. But he applied for a scholarship from one of Pennsylvania's school choice scholarship programs, and he instead went to a nearby prep school and later went on to attend and graduate from High Point University. It's stories like these that show why the General Assembly in Pennsylvania needs to expand school choice in Pennsylvania. But that's not enough. We also need to act at the federal level, and as a senator, I'll do that. I'll support the Education Choice for Children Act. This would create a federal tax credit that allows children and businesses to make tax-deductible contributions to organizations that provide scholarships to low and middle-income families. This would provide tens of thousands of Pennsylvania kids with scholarships to pick the school of their choice, funded not by taxpayers, but by private citizens. Senator Casey won't support this legislation because he's against giving kids in failing schools the ability to make a move to the school of their choice. And that's because Senator Casey's beholden to the same teachers' unions that kept our kids out of the classroom for years during COVID. But here's what really makes me angry. Senator Casey went to parochial school, yet he opposes to giving his constituents in failing public schools the same opportunity. Pennsylvania deserves a senator who supports school choice, because choosing where your child goes to school should not be a privilege that's only reserved for the wealthy and well-connected parents. And finally, we need to ban children under the age of 16 from using social media. Ban children under the age of 16 from using social media. A study from the Centers for Disease Control last year found that 20%, 1/5, of 12 to 17-year-old kids have at least one major depressive episode. Researchers such as Jonathan Haidt have documented how addictive and anxiety-inducing social media is as a major driver of mental health crisis that's affecting our teenagers. Haidt singles out how unfettered access to social media during puberty can create unhealthy attachment to social media and being online. And let's not even talk about the sexual predators and all the ways that our innocent children can be exploited. Congress has repeatedly failed to update federal laws such as the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act that was meant to protect kids online in the early days of the internet. And this is one where we need to come together in a bipartisan way to address this crisis and protect children by properly treating kids under 16 as minors, needing protection from the harmful effects of social media. These 4 policies provide a sampling of the ideas and the leadership that I'll bring to Pennsylvania as your next senator. I'll fight for every family in our Commonwealth at every stage of life to solve the problems and create opportunity. And that requires change. We need a leader who's going to bring real change. We need a leader who has ideas grounded in experience and a set of principles for investing in thriving families. We need a leader who has tangible policy ideas that will fight to make them a reality. We need a leader who's focused on action, not press releases. Bob Casey is not that leader. Bob Casey has not demonstrated leadership or delivered results. His government-centric, top-down approach, throwing taxpayer money and regulations at problems, has failed us time and time again. Pennsylvania needs an outsider who will shake up the status quo in the Senate and push for bold and aggressive action on behalf of working families. That's what I'll do from the very first day with your support in November. Pennsylvania families deserve it. Thank you very much for your time today, and thank you for your attention. Thank you, sir. Good to see you. You got stuck up front. Nice to see you. Thank you, sir. Nice to see you again. Thank you.
Good. All right, everybody, we're going to do just a couple questions here for Dave McCormick. Look, I feel like when you're talking about raising them through pregnancy, childhood, and then adolescence, and dealing with parents in retirement, I feel like I saw my life flash before my eyes, and I don't want to do the math on that $15,000 a year for all of my kids, so I'm not gonna right in this second. But I appreciate you addressing so many of these things that are close to my heart, including caring for women in pregnancy. Something stuck out to me. You talked about IVF.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of peers who deal with those struggles, who are currently dealing with them. And it's such an expense. It can be such a burden. It can be so heartbreaking for them. Tell me about this policy proposal and exactly how it would work.
Yeah, your point about IVF, which is right now the cost of IVF is so prohibitive that for many families it's just not an option. So the opportunity for parenthood, the opportunity to have a family, if you're struggling with pregnancy, is only available to the people that can afford it.
Right.
So it's sort of completely against what we want for our citizens and what we want for Americans. So the numbers I looked at show that it can often be fertilization treatments or IVF can often be $25,000, $30,000. So this unfortunately won't cover the whole expense, but a $15,000 tax credit would essentially offset $15,000 worth of expenses, and you'd have 2 tax years to be able to take advantage of that. And essentially, I think it opens up the possibility for parenthood for many families that simply don't have it. And my experience as a CEO, we funded this as one of the benefits for our employees. And of all the things that was sort of emotionally uplifting, it was this one, because it didn't affect that many people, but for those that it affected, it gave them an opportunity. And these were people that would probably not have been able to have children without that level of support. And so it's an investment on both sides. The government's investing by giving the tax credit, but the family's also investing because it doesn't cover the whole expense, but it covers enough of it to make it accessible. And I can't think of a better sort of pro-family, pro-woman, pro-business policy than this one.
Well, it sounds like on that end, paid parental leave is another one where it sounds like you're a real money where your mouth is kind of person.
Yeah, I really tried to be. You can think about, when you're trying to run a business, how do you want to define yourself? And one of the ways that I want to define this, it's hard because you have to make trade-offs when you're trying to have a business and revenue costs and there's a number of different things. But our view was that if we had a set of benefits that would make our company unique and create a community where people felt like we expected unbelievable things out of them. We were hugely demanding. But in return for that, they were part of an organization that was deeply committed to not just their work life, but the totality of their life, including having a set of policies that were pro-family. We thought that would increase over time our ability to get the best and the brightest and our capacity to retain them. So it doesn't always show up in dollars and cents, But that was one of the ways we defined ourselves, and it turned out to be great. And in particular, one of the things that we struggled with is we didn't want women to leave the workforce.
Right.
You know, that a real challenge is if you are able to attract great women early on, and at a certain point when they want to start to have kids, if your organization is not designed appropriately, they opt out of the workforce, and it's very hard to get them back. And so the amount of effort to recruit somebody back in their early 30s is radically different than in their early 20s. So if you can create a set of programs that make it manageable to have a family and retain great talent, it's great business. So all that's to say, this was in line with our values of what we wanted to be, but more than that, it was great business because it allowed us to attract great folks and keep them.
Well, I spoke to that a bit in my remarks. I have 4 kids, which I believe, as they call it in Lancaster, is a good start.
Yeah.
Working on it. But no, it really, the costs do stack up. I've ended up taking career choices based on flexibility or based on ways to be there for my children more often, as opposed to doing a more traditional route, choosing organizations that would be more friendly to my family, which brings me to the idea of childcare and school choice, because I watched in Northern Virginia as all of my mom friends suffered through 2 years in some of the most lauded public school systems in the United States.
Yeah.
Their kids out of school for large parts of each week, if not, permanently for 18 months at one point in Fairfax. That took its toll on all families.
Yeah.
But the fewer resources you had, the more toll it took.
Right.
And now they're all trying to play catch up, and they're stuck in a situation where, as you noted, sometimes the system is just not delivering the results that your family deserves. And as a mom, you want your kid to be somewhere where you're trusting the folks who are doing a good job with those kids. And many of them are trying so hard, but the system is not delivering that.
Yeah.
It seems like this might be an answer to some of that.
Absolutely. It's really heartbreaking. COVID was there were so many bad things about COVID. One of the good things, I guess, if you could call it that, is that you had parents looking over the shoulder of their children and seeing the actual curriculum, seeing the engagement with the teachers, seeing some of the topics, seeing the history that was taught. And many parents found it deeply troubling what they witnessed when they looked over the shoulder of their kids in these Zoom calls. And we have school choice across the country. The school choice is that people with money send their kids wherever they want. And so when we talk about school choice is to make sure that opportunity exists for everybody. And it's a very, very simple concept. As I said, I'm a product of public school. My mom and dad were public school teachers. I think being a teacher is one of the greatest gifts you could give to society. But our schools are failing us. Yeah. By any measure, our schools are failing us. So we need to shake things up. And you're not going to shake things up incrementally. You got to shake things up in a big way. And the way to do that is essentially attach the money that goes into educating a kid to the kid. We're all paying for it. We're all paying for these kids to be able to go to school. Attach the money to the kid and let the kid have the choice of what certified school they're going to go to. The beauty of that is it's going to create competition. The beauty of that is going to give everybody equal opportunity. The great schools will rise to the top and be highly sought after. The schools that are not good enough will either fix themselves or go away, which is what they should do. The teachers that aren't great performers will go away, which they should. It's a great honor to be a teacher, but it's a great responsibility. We should get rid of bad teachers. And that competition will be great for everybody, but it's going to be disruptive as hell, and it needs to be. And so, a lot of these decisions are made at the local level, but as I'm advocating, we also can encourage this at the federal level as a senator. And you think about, being a CEO, you learn that there's a million things you want to do, but there's 3 or 4 things that you can do that can change the direction of things in a meaningful way. This is something that can change the direction of our country by giving true opportunity to all, and that's why I'm behind it.
It's a little bit like thinking of it as protecting children over protecting the status quo for grown-ups, because that's what ended up happening often during COVID. Speaking of protecting children, let's talk about this social media ban. Let me ask you this. So I agree with you about all of the mental health issues with this. I keep my kids off of screens to the greatest degree possible. And then I'm also wary of the federal government being the tool for doing it. Tell me why that's the best answer for making this happen.
Well, listen, it's one I struggle with, because anytime you say, let's get the government more involved, that's the answer, I have an allergic reaction. So my general view is less government, more. It's getting the government involved in regulating access to information is a slippery slope. But I think we've hit a tipping point where the breadth of social media is so profound. The depth of some of the things you can find on social media that are detrimental to children, everything from pornography to sexual predators to scams to cyberbullying. I mean, it is, imagine this, it's like if your kid walks to school every day through the neighborhood, and if the neighborhood's increasingly dangerous, there's a certain level of risk you can take, but when it becomes increasingly dangerous, you say, we have to have a new set of policies. Every kid that walks has to be escorted, there has to be armed guards, whatever it is. You get a certain level of risk to your children, you say, we've got to take an extra step. And I think we've hit the tipping point where what's happening to our kids as a consequence of social media is really has long-term consequences that undermine their ability to be great citizens. So I think it's sort of fundamental. And so it seemed to me a reasonable step to say, listen, we're going to, just like we limit cigarettes and alcohol and certain types of guns, a whole range of things that you can't get access to when you're a child. Let's limit access to social media, and when they become 16 and of age to have a little more maturity, still not old enough to vote or enter the draft, but when they get to 16, then let's release some of those restrictions. But we protect. And listen, we're sitting in a room of great parents who are exercising, I suspect, the right balance and sort of getting that right, or at least thinking hard about it. It's always hard to get the right balance perfect. Think about all those kids that don't have those kind of homes that I just talked about in my speech. So we're protecting them too.
As I always say, free range your kids in the world, not on the internet. That's my approach.
Right.
Well, and I also, one last thing I want to say, I appreciate you calling out the Biden administration's total economic illiteracy about providing childcare, which is raise the standards a great degree for who can do childcare, make it harder for them to meet them, have fewer childcare providers, magically lower
Price
costs.
goes up, yeah.
So I appreciate you calling that. And what's the alternate plan?
Yeah, the alternate plan is to make it much, give parents added capacity with child care credits. And, this same approach of sort of top down is what's happening in the nursing home industry, where the government's mandating the ratio of how many care providers need to be in nursing homes. And essentially, I think it was 9 or 10 nursing homes in Pennsylvania last month filed for bankruptcy because the government's imposing a set of restrictions or requirements that aren't viable. So it's again, it's the old Ronald Reagan line about the scariest words you've ever heard is I'm from the government, I'm here to help you. That is the risk here, that in the pursuit of trying to help people, let's give everybody the benefit of the doubt in terms of what the motivation was, a top-down government-centric set of requirements is also often going to have unexpected consequences and drive up the cost, as it has with Obamacare and lots of other things. So I agree, and that's why if you look at the agenda that I just put forward, we're trying to get it out of the hands of government, put the decision rights in the hands of parents, give them financial protection or support through tax credits, but also have them have skin in the game. Like, this isn't student loan relief, right? Where you don't have skin. This is skin in the game. Like, if you want to invest in a family, we want to invest with you. So that's the kind of philosophy that I think is going to change. I don't want to be too dark about it, but if you look at those statistics I was talking about on families, like, we gotta make some dramatic choices and get family policy back on track and get our growing families back on track, and hopefully these ideas are a good start.
Well, I'm doing my best. I can't keep up with your 6 girls, but well done. Thank you for this policy chat. I know you have constituents to talk to.
I know
it's
there's a lot here, but it's a big problem, and we need lots of good answers. So thank you all for bearing with me and listening to this.
Thank you guys for being here. Thank you.
See you.